If you're thinking of building yourself a Murphy bed, stay right here. Check out how cool this is. I used the Create-A-Bed Murphy bed kit to build a queen size for myself, and I did it for around 875 bucks. And I'm gonna tell you exactly how I did it. Create-A-Bed kits come with a really incredible set of instructions. I'm a nerd, I read instructions. These are the best ones I've ever had. But I did find a few ways they could still improve them, and I do go through all of those ways in the video. So check it out. The very first thing you'll build is the inner wood bed frame, which is just where the mattress rests. If you have a miter saw, you can easily cut these down to size, or if you need to use a circular saw, that works great too. You're simply making a little L shape and combining these 1x2 pine boards to make the supports. And what you're seeing here is a little bit of layout work to just make the process go a little faster. I'm pre-drilling all the holes ahead of time so that I can quickly fasten these together. Running a bead of glue along the inside is what's really gonna keep these strong and last for a very long time. The screws are simply to hold them right then and there so you don't have to clamp them and wait for glue to dry. It's just like an extra insurance policy to put the screws in there. So if they pull away from you like that, you can go ahead and grab a little trigger clamp like you see me using here from Vessi. You don't have to have this, but it certainly is nice. It acts as an extra pair of hands. And after you have all 5 frame struts made in this L shape, you can lay them out. For the queen size vertical, it's 20 inches apart, as you can see here in the diagram provided by Create-A-Bed. I pre-drilled all of these holes. Again, you're just working with pine and it may split, so you don't want that to happen. Pre-drilling is a really great way to prevent that. After you have all these fastened together, it is time to start working with your sheet goods. All right, it's time to get rocking with actually cutting our parts down. And my recommendation to you is to first rip off the factory edge. It's not always perfectly straight or square. And then go ahead and just cut all of the parts and slap a piece of tape on it to label what it is. The instructions that come with this kit are really well thought out. However, they don't have you cut all the parts at once. And when you're working with sheet goods like this, you don't want to make 2 cuts in one and then have to grab a different sheet to work on different parts. And they just set up the order of operations a little differently than is convenient for me. So I went ahead and just decided to cut all my parts first. And then I actually just got them close with the track saw, finished them up to final length on the table saw, and then labeled with the tape so that I could keep everything organized. This step has us measuring 3 1/8 inch down from the end of the side rail and 2.5 inches down from the top to find the center point of our leg pivot plate. This step has us using a 5/8 inch drill bit and drilling a 1/2 inch deep hole. A drilling guide like this one takes a little bit of guesswork out of it because it does have a depth stop you can set to a 1/2 inch, and it makes sure your drill stays upright. If measuring isn't really your thing, Create-A-Bed does provide a pretty nice template that comes in this kit. So as long as you can cut on the dotted line, you can lay this paper directly on top of your side rail. You could drill right through the center of that hole you see in the picture, and you can also use it to trace your radius for the front end of the side rail. I wanted to check out the leg hardware before I got to cutting with the jigsaw and finish laying out any other holes that needed to be drilled. So I went ahead and grabbed the kit and removed the leg hardware from it so that I could get a little test fit, which proved to be pretty difficult, but it makes sense. You really want these parts to fit well and stay strong, so this is not easy to do. You either have to use a little bit of beeswax to get it in or do a little convincing with some clamps like I did. At this point, you check for parallel to make sure your leg hardware is fitted correctly, and the instructions will tell you to drill a 1/4 inch hole through the bottom 2 holes of this plate. And it was at this point that I discovered that my 1/4 inch drill bit didn't seem to be able to clear the sides of the plate, and I didn't want to chew up the hardware or ruin my bit, so I decided I'm just going to use a pencil, trace out the holes, and when you use a brad point drill bit, helps you get that bit right on center. So that's what I decided to do at this point. This is the layout required for the 1-inch pivot hole that you will see me drill here in a second, but I just wanted to add another reminder. As you continue to do all your layout, be meticulous about using tape and a Sharpie marker to not only label your parts, but label whether they're inside or outside. Trust me. This step involves the adjustable lower ball stud plate, which is a lot of words that basically means adjusting this impacts the tension or how hard or easy it is to raise and lower the mattress. This larger Forstner bit is being used to drill the hole for the female pivot plate. Now that that part was finished up, I decided to head back to the front radius on the side rail and use my jigsaw to cut the curve. Okay, time to install the pivot plates. That just goes in that hole. So, female pivot plate gets mounted on the side rail. And although these are packaged together, you gotta, there's no good way to say it. You gotta pull the male pivot plate out of the female pivot plate and set it aside because you're not dealing with that until step 20 something, and this is only step 13. So as you see me use the combination square to make sure this is in the right place, using one of my favorite little gadgety drill bits to get this fastened on. This is the last step for prepping side rails. After this, we are heading back to that bed frame that we initially built to start piecing things together already. This next part is where it starts getting good. You're assembling it, it's starting to look like a bed, and I have a specific note for you on the headrail and the footrail. I actually found a way to save you a good chunk of change. Instead of buying 4 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood for this project, you can get away with buying only 3 because parts H, the front and rear rails, can actually fit on this sheet with the side rail. It's tight, but it does fit. And instead, buy a 1x10x6 for your footrail and headrail. You will save about $75. Hey, we're there. Fastening the side rails to the inner bed frame maybe doesn't have to be as precise as I did it. I used clamps underneath the frame to make sure everything was flush on that side before fastening because eventually the plywood front is going to go on that side, and if they're not flush, your plywood's not going to sit very flat. So our side rails are attached and it's time to continue pre-drilling some holes to fasten this all together. If you'll notice, I didn't take the time to apply my edge banding prior to this step. I highly recommend when you see the part in your instructions where it says, now's a great time to use edge banding, don't ignore that like I did because you just would rather be building than edge banding because edge banding is, who likes edge banding? Nobody. But definitely do it then because if you don't, you'll be stuck doing it while it's assembled, which isn't terrible, but it is a little bit more difficult. So just do it when the instructions tell you to do it. It's a lot more convenient that way. If you opt to use the adhesive-backed edge banding, heat it up with an iron and use a scrap piece of wood like you see me doing here. As it cools, it will stick really well. This project was so much easier having this type of dual head bit where you can pre-drill and countersink really quickly and then flip around and be driving the fastener in. And especially because these are all magnetic bits, it just made this process a lot easier.
Ooh,